There seems to be certain milestones in a woodworker's development when they seem to go through a breakthrough in their kind of mental thinking about the craft. I mean, you see it time and time again when the learning curve of a new woodworker just kind of plateaus and then for some reason takes off and the quality of their output just skyrockets. I mean, when a new woodworker decides that there are a lot more angles that they could use other than 45 and 90, or that when all of a sudden curves seem a reachable goal to incorporate into their woodworking. When wood turning, there's also a kind of change when a turner realizes that not everything has to be balanced and not everything has to be a circle. Once a woodworker recognizes the concept of offset turning, of turning stuff out of balance, a whole world of opportunities opens up to you. Before then, we are basically thinking about maybe turning squares that are perfectly balanced round. I mean, that's why we cut out square blanks before we go on the lathe. You mark out the center section so when you square that blank, even though it's square, the weight is balanced. If you have something unbalanced, you turn up the speed, you know, the whole lathe shakes and stuff like that. But the more experience you gain with it, you kind of realize that, hey, you don't have to turn up the speed that much. And you can utilize turning between centers or on a chuck to angle, to weigh a curve to one side or the other. And it just opens up so much opportunity. Let's take a simple example. A dog bone handle. These are things that a lot of people will use on small boxes or something like that. And they were popular when, you know, metal fasteners weren't that common. You would just make a handle out of wood. And what they would do is they would take a board, they would cut down the center, and then they would remove that with a saw. Notice it is still balanced, and even that would be a wide board. If you're spinning it, the opposing weight is even, so you can spin it fairly fast and do the work. Then you could turn the center section round or do any kind of shaping you want and make it comfortable. After you're done with your turning, what do? You go over to the bandsaw, you turn some kind of shape, nail that through or screw that through, and you got a handle to hold on to whatever you want. But how much wood is wasted? All of that section right there is just trash. Plus, look at the handle shape. A complete circle. Everybody, hold your hand up in front of your face. Then grab something like it's a circle. Do you notice that your palm is somewhat flat? That the curve of your fingers is a tighter radius than what your palm can do. It's just the nature of the human hand. So is it that comfortable to lift heavy things that are round? Wouldn't that put pressure points along your hand? Well, if you can modify the curve, you could handle that. And that's the world we're opening up with offset turning. Let's take that same project. Start with a much smaller board. Couldn't you just put your centers right there and let the balanced weight go around? Yeah, you can. The key thing is when you're doing offset turning, you just need to make sure that the gyroscoping weight isn't going to throw the wood off. You need to have a lot of contact on both sides, either piercing the wood or touching the wood, and you're just not going to turn that fast. Now from the side, when you're turning a balance board, you would turn the circle right here. And that would be your handle, weight balance. Offset turning, we just skip that point and turn the handle up here. And we'll leave the rest of the shaping for the bandsaw. But couldn't we do more? Obviously, if you're turning that top handle right there, you would put the center right here. But what would happen if we thought outside the box, used offset turning to allow multiple curves in the same handle? What would happen if you put the center of your curve right there? All of a sudden, that top of the handle would be a much broader curve. What if you relocated it after that and then turned the handle right there? What size handle shape would you have? A smooth curver on one side, a tighter curve down the other side. Hey, wouldn't that be the side of your palm and your fingers gripping a handle on either side? Then you would just saw off the sides and put your screw through the end. Let's try it out. So I've got a piece of 2x4 here. It's nothing special. I believe it's some kind of white pine. I'm using this because this is like the worst thing you could do for offset turning because it's so soft. I mean, the fibers could just tear out on you and the thing could go flying, right? But we've got enough experience now that we kind of have a general idea of how much gyroscoping effect's happening on, and we want to experiment with the concept of offset turning. So what I'm going to be using is a drive spur between centers. Notice I have extended the tip of my drive spur quite a bit more, so it's going to pierce into the wood a lot more. I'm also using a fairly big drive spur, and on the back of it, on the back end, I'm not going to use a cone. That doesn't have that much surface area. I want that surface area. That's why that four-sided drive spur is so good. So I'm using a what do they call these? I'm forgetting the name, but it's going to be contacting all the way around, in addition to a spur that goes in pretty deeply. And that'll squeeze the wood just fine. So I think it's fair to say that this is pretty out of balance, but if we turn our speed down, it should be okay. Stand to the side when you start it on, and just turn it to a point where your lathe doesn't shake. It's not going to be that fast. Other precautions, you're going to need to set your tool rest in the right depth. And I've always found that this part is critical because you can kind of memorize the distance. And you're going to be turning air for what? 320 degrees of the whole arc. So you want to be able to control the distance of your tool using your fingers and the depth. So with a sharp edge on a cutting tool, this is not going to be a scraping action. Just slowly enter until you touch the bevel first, and bevel first, nothing changes. Lift up until you see shavings coming off the blade, and then just slowly control it using your fingers as a depth stop. Now here's something that a lot of people do instinctively the more they gain skill. They stop watching the tool edge. If you're watching the tool edge, it's hard to see what profile you're cutting. But if you're watching the shadow, whatever you make, or the top edge, you can see the shape you're cutting a lot easier because it's 3D. At this angle, you're looking straight down. It's hard to show depth. The depth shows up. So when you're doing offset turning, you actually want to watch the reflection up here as you're going along to see what kind of shape you want carved. Nothing really changes. It's just you're watching the top edge, and for the most part you have a lot of pressure on the tool rest so that you control where your bevel is touching and how the blade interacts with the wood. Oh, looky there, we got a nice gentle curve, low torn out, but a little sandpaper can take care of that. You can even use other tools besides your rough and gouge. How about your skew? Same exact technique. Touch it to the tool rest, come in, watch your profile. Nice little V cuts. Little tear out right there, but I'm not worried about it. How about your spindle gouge? Touch a bevel. Just treat it like a solid piece. So, let's offset it again. See what happens. Except before I do that one, I'm going to clear away this stuff on the bandsaw. We don't need that one. It'll save us some time. Now you might be asking yourself, hey, why didn't we just bandsaw it out in the first place? Well, we were squeezing between centers there. Not having any material right here wouldn't allow us to get the pressure we needed. Well, now that we're not going to be using that part anymore, and that this is just an example, I can go ahead and get rid of it. As it will now get rid of a lot of the offset weight. So our objective now is to finish turning this into a sphere so it's comfortable to grab. Now, because we're now in the center and we have offsets coming out here, our tool is going to need to go out a little bit farther. So if you have heavier tools, that's when you would use it. But I'm going to start out just like last time with my roughing gouge. My spindle roughing gouge. You don't use a roughing gouge on a bowl. So there you go, a simple dog bone handle ready for side of a chest or whatever you want. Nice flat on top, radius on bottom, fits a hand really nice in this direction. Didn't take much long to do. I probably spent 10 minutes because I was filming doing this. Obviously I did. You can design it a lot better, get your shapes a lot better. This was just done fast for the demonstration. But offset turning. It's opened up so much more potential in spindle turning than just making round sticks. Since we are talking about offset turning today, I thought I'd introduce y'all to Derek Weidman. Even if you are not a turner, you are going to want to check out this guy's work. It is just phenomenal. But before we do that one, if you've liked this channel, if you like this series or any of my longer form videos, please do me a favor. Like, favorite, subscribe to all those social medias. And visit my website where I have an online store where you're going to see a lot more products from me to sell to y'all. And that will help subsidize this school. The latest one was I'm making a replacement saw handles for the Stanley sharp tooth saw. Because basically the saw handle that came with it sucks. And this will improve your form and make it a lot more comfortable to use this tool during the day. And I hope to have 3 other shop-made products that will help you out in your woodworking available by the end of this month. So visit wortheffort.com, read the blog, visit the store, see my own woodworking as long as some shop-made tools I'll be making for y'all. Now Derek Weidman came into the wood turning realm seemingly from nowhere and brought a huge wave of imagination. He does offset sculpting. He literally makes animal heads, shapes, fishes, all that kind of stuff on the lathe and colors them off the lathe. But most of the sculpting is done on the lathe. He's taking these things, putting them between centers, changing them up. It's just radically, I don't think anybody was thinking the way he did, bringing his sculpture's philosophy to the lathe. And I'm not sure how much you'll get from his lessons online. He's more known for doing these in-person tutorials, but just admire the thought that goes into it, because it will show you that a lathe can do so much more than what traditional turning offers. Derek Weidman, I'll put a link down below. Check it out. Even if you are not a turner, you will really appreciate the work he's doing. And I want you to remember one last thing. It is always worth the effort to learn, create, and share with others. Y'all be safe and have fun.